Good evening, welcome to the Red Hook Town Board meeting of October 10th. Would you be kind enough to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Steve, for the folks at home, we have on the screen a list of the agenda items so they can take a look and see how long they want to hang on with us this evening. Okay, very good. We start this first meeting of the month, as we do each month, with the supervisor's report. And do we have that here? I will read it to you. These are the balances for the period ending September 30th, 2017. We began the month with an opening balance of $4,838,993.22. We had receipts of $411,969. We had disbursements of $494,965. That leaves us with an ending balance of $4,722,962. And Harry, you always want to know what's in the preservation fund. You see it's about $900,000. And I'm expecting by the time the year is over, we'll be over $1 million. We should have a little celebration because that CPF was passed 10 years and 3 days ago. So we're halfway through the 20-year term where the CPF is operable, and it's done great things for us in land preservation. It sunsets. It's a 20-year authority.
It expires after that?
It expires after that, and we would have to go ahead and renew it with a public referendum. Okay.
But so far, we did quite a bit with it earlier on, but things have been very slow with it lately.
Well, we have our closing coming up in just a few weeks on the Stickle property there,
Okay.
Upper Red Hook,
That really
outside of
only
Tivoli.
make a small dent in it, I think, comparatively.
Plenty of work left to do though.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions about the supervisor's report? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Sue McCann, our town clerk, is not with us today. Claire, do you have a report? Oh, great. Thank you,
Okay,
Claire.
the town clerk's report for the period of September 1st to September 30th, 2017. Total local shares remitted to the supervisor, $1,465.05. Amount paid to New York State Ag and Markets, $61. Amount paid to New York State Department of Health, $225. And amount paid to New York State DEC, $5,211.95, for a total state, county, and local revenues of $6,963. Pursuant to Section 27, Sub 1 of the Town Law, Sue McCann certifies that the foregoing is a full and true statement of all fees and monies received by her during the period stated above in connection with her office, accepting only such fees and monies the application of which are otherwise provided for by law. Signed, Sue McCann.
Terrific. And would somebody like to make a motion to accept the town clerk's report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. We have a public hearing up next, scheduled for 7:35, or a couple minutes late. It is for the 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program. And a requirement of the grant application is that we hold a public hearing and solicit input from the public. So, would someone in the public like to speak to this issue? Linda?
As I understand it, this money is going towards ADA compliance for the rec department as far as the challenge field. I would also like to see or know of, are you putting in like checkerboards and chessboards so that those that are not physically competitive can compete in a different way? And will we be extending this beyond the age of 21 when the children age out in the school system so that adults can participate more in the rec programs? This would include Devereaux and Astor, which we have a lot, in the school system too. So I would just like to see it expanded, and I'm glad that we're doing this, that the town hall after 25 years is finally in compliance with the law, and we should continue in this vein. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. We haven't made a decision what the application will be for. As you know, we did receive an award for the Challenger Field. One of the things we are contemplating is applying again for additional monies because we will need to have ADA compliant restrooms and ADA compliant pavilion for that Rec Park West, ADA compliant parking. So all of those things add up, and we do have money allocated for that project outside of grant funds, but the more we can do with grant monies, obviously, the better. So.
Everyone benefits from it.
Right, and as far as senior rec, we do have money in the program. I think as of really this last year, more senior rec money towards programs that might actually exist at the new community center. And I don't know if Sarah, if you wanted to address the issue of checkerboards and chessboards and stuff.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so we're in the process of creating a master plan for updating the rec park playground, the existing one. And one of the things we're looking at is more sensory options and just more rec options for, it's mainly focused on kids thinking of playground, but you're right that something like a checkerboard, chessboard is really sort of an all ages thing, and there's plenty of kids who would enjoy that, and maybe it's wise to think of the playground update as not simply for the children, but you know, having a few other pieces in there. So that's for the specific existing playground, but that's definitely something we should think about.
It's the interaction between.
Yeah, and I think we're
people
sort
and
of
people.
using it as like the committee that's thinking about that project in the back of our minds is we'd love to have more rec things over the new side. So what are we, as we come up with ideas, what are the things that would fit better over there? You know, it would be nice to have a diversity of options so that it's not like a replica right on either side, but maybe the one side has some more passive rec and other things that are different from the what's it, is it east and
West.
west, right?
The
So
new one's
west
the
is
west.
the exist.
West is
This
new,
is
east
new.
Yeah,
is old.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
West is the new one,
That's
yeah,
right.
so not totally to replicate Rec Park East, but to make something a little different. So I will add that, I'm adding that now to our list of ideas, and then we'll be, trying to figure out where they all fit, sort of I'm trying to create like a master plan, so.
What group is this next?
It's like a subcommittee of the Rec Commission, so it's like a few people from there and a few other people from the community. You'd be welcome to join if you want. I'll send you an email the next time we meet. Yeah, it's kind of ad hoc, yeah.
Yeah, there used to be some exercise equipment for seniors to work scattered around the rec park, and I know that's being looked at again, whether or not we could do something like that. Would anybody else like to speak to the public hearing on the issue? Okay, very good. Hearing No other comments, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
And,
Thank you all very much. Announcements, just a couple of quick announcements for the folks at home. We're very happy to let you know that the Red Hook Rotary is honoring former Councilwoman Brenda Cagle as their Rotary Citizen of the Year. That is an event scheduled for Tuesday, October 24th. Starts at 6:15 at the Red Hook Firehouse Community Room, Firehouse Lane. There is a charge for this event, it's $45 per person. A portion of those proceeds go to, it's a donation towards the foundation, that's the Red Hook Rotary Foundation, and those proceeds benefit local education scholarships and youth programs, and that's Tuesday, October 24th, 2 weeks from tonight, as a matter of fact. Prior to that, at the Red Hook Fire Company as well, they are having an event October 19th. It's a food truck event that they're having there, 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. October 19th would then be Thursday evening. The Red Hook Chocolate Festival is coming quickly upon us. That's Saturday, November 4th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. There are events and tastings and demonstrations throughout the day in Red Hook Village at the various stores and restaurants, and it's really a terrific event that keeps growing each and every year. For the folks at home, it's a little bit too late, but we also have on the 14th, which would be this Saturday, the Red Hook Community Center is having their fall gala, and that's in the evening, and you can call 758-0077 for more information about that. And I believe that's all I have for announcements. Does anybody else have anything? Okay. Very good. We can go into the regular public comment period. Does anybody have any public comments they'd like to make? Sir, would you be kind enough to come to the mic? Okay, Linda, you're going first. Ladies first.
Okay. I've noticed on our website, which I know you're going to be updating and whatnot, that many of the committees are not up to date on their minutes. There are a few that are, but most are not. And it's very important that the people know what's happening in town government. So I would suggest that you put the thumb down on some of these groups to get their minutes together. And some of the minutes are not really minutes. They're notes. Minutes are defined in a specific way. If you need more information, contact me.
I was waiting for an explanation, but I thought you were going to give us a tutorial.
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Linda. Mr. Miglarelli.
Good evening. Has everybody received a letter from Teresa Burke, the highway superintendent, on the roads?
Yes, the local road inventory. Yep.
You received that
Yep.
letter?
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so I'm gonna address that, being I live on Freeborn Lane.
Yeah.
And it's one of the roads in question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just debating, wondering what's gonna become of the road. When we set that up I think Sue pulled out some minutes from 1990 when we just, when the town board decided to put gates on the roads. And Al Trezor was the lawyer at that time, town attorney, I should say. And he supposedly put in some wording that, that we had control over the gates, and that he didn't want us to lose our road frontage on Freeborn Lane. So now, after talking to Teresa, there's some funding that comes from New York State, so we need to make a decision of what's gonna happen to the north end of the road. So, I have mixed feelings about it, because if we take the gates down and then the road gets repaired to town specs, I don't know if anybody, Jim might remember what that road looked like in the 80s.
Oh, yes.
It used to be called Dump Road. And it wasn't like just a few bags of garbage. I mean, you could fill up like a couple of 15-yard dump trucks of garbage. So it took like a few years to get the town to, you know, they cleaned it up and they put signs, and that didn't work for a few years, and then we decided to put the gates up. And then, like I said, Al didn't want us to lose frontage on the road, even though a lot of the land along there is either has a conservation easement or. So anyway, I have mixed feelings about taking the gates down, although I don't wanna lose the frontage. But then if the garbage starts, you know, I don't know what thoughts the town board has had, but
We have a lot of issues to look into, legal issues as well as maintenance issues, but I would encourage you, any concerns you have or any particulars you want us to look at, just shoot me an email, I'll distribute it to the board,
Right.
and we can see if, you know, we can address those issues for
I mean,
you.
a decision's gonna have to be made in the near future about, you know, that I guess Vosburg Road also. So,
Yeah, the problem at the time, the Tivoli dump was still on that road
right,
and was still used by them, but, you know, it would be closed, so people were dumping garbage, and it got costly for our highway department to
Right.
clean up the garbage. And so that's why it was a tough decision at the time, but that's why the gates were placed there.
right. And that, I mean, like I said, that's 27 years ago, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if the gates are taken down and the road is brought up to town specifications. Hopefully, we won't have this issue again.
Right.
Right now, it's a dirt road, isn't it? I've been through there a couple of times.
Yeah.
When I saw the gate open, I went in just to be nosy.
Right.
But it's really just a dirt road.
It always was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be on one parcel, I'm gonna be putting a farm building on one parcel and bring electric to that building, so, that's gonna be within the gates of, on that road, so, like I said, I have mixed feelings, I think the gates maybe should come down and the road put up to the specifications, or, you know, and if the gates stay up, I don't know, then who controls, I guess the question is, who controls the road if the gate stays up, if the gates?
Yeah, those are all the issues we're looking into now. I apologize, we don't have an answer for you yet.
No, I know.
But we will,
Okay,
okay?
well, I mean, you can call upon me also, I mean,
I'm sure we will.
and there's some other landowners along that road,
Yeah.
not too many. I think we have most of the frontage on both sides,
Yeah.
so.
Good.
There are other landowners on the gated part of it?
Well, there's the.
Well,
There's
there's
the
the
village.
Tiv- the-
There's
the
the village
village of
owns part of
Tivoli.
it, right?
And then actually, there's the village of Tivoli and then just one other,
Yeah.
but they only have like maybe 50 feet or so.
Yeah.
So the rest is either village of Tivoli or myself. Okay?
But of course, if you have frontage on that and need to get to your building, obviously, you
Right. But then again, I don't want it's, a lot of people would travel on, I worry about having a building that far, you know, I'm just worried about having the road open.
Yeah.
But then this control, I have mixed feelings about both sides of it, so if we could talk about it more in the future, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny. Okay, any other public comments? Linda?
The antithesis of having a dump is the tree preservation committee has been working very hard, and they did the sign at the rec park pool, and it looks tremendously good. So you all should take a look at that. Before you couldn't see the sign very well, it was so overgrown. And some of the dead trees were taken out, and it looks 100% better.
It does, we actually acknowledged it at the last
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
We were so impressed that we
Okay.
wanted to make sure everybody knew that the tree committee was involved with that project.
And this fall, we're finally getting to Pitcher Lane, the west side, and thanks to Kenny, he's gonna be helping to plant 4 trees, 4 oaks.
Good.
So this is the beginning of a long-term project.
Great. Thank you, Linda. All right, any other public comments? Okay, very good. Well, we can move on to agenda item number 1. Thank you all for your thoughts. The first item on the agenda is a resolution to award a contract for new website design and development. And I think we should probably start this agenda item with huge thanks to Dick Wambach, who's been our webmaster for I don't even know how many years. He's just a consummate gentleman and has been really very responsive to all the needs that we have for our website. We, quite some time ago, I think the beginning of last year, I wanted to look at having much more interactive capabilities. And so Sarah and the Communications Committee has been working very diligently to research options that are out there and to prepare, submit, review an RFP. And so, Sarah, I'll hand it over to you to finish what I have left
Sure.
on this issue.
Actually, we have a member of the Communications Committee, Matt, is in the back. I don't know if you wanna, I'll just talk and you'll stop me if I miss something. Okay, so we have been meeting regularly since January, at least once a month, and then more after we got our RFP responses back. But we created an RFP that had 8 parts. And then we did a whole weighting and scoring system. So we had 4 responses, and out of the 4, there was one that clearly rose to the top, which was Civic Plus. So we have summarized our findings in this 2-page memo that the board has, and maybe in the agenda packet up front if anybody wants to see it. Happy to share it publicly, and we are one of those committees that has not updated our minutes on the website, which is, for a communications committee, reprehensible. So we will update that for you. Yeah, so anyway, Civic Plus is the vendor that we are recommending that the town go with, and basically when we really took a look at what we thought the town needed, Robert is correct to say that Dick has really met our needs as far as responsiveness and updating the website. But as far as the actual design and the ability to give people live updates when we have things on the website that we want people to really be able to see, the ability to have a subscription feature where, you know, if you're interested in the tree committee or the rec or the highway or whatever it is, you could subscribe and have emails or texts sent to you. There's all kinds of things now that websites can do that really would streamline our communications process, especially for a town like us that really can't afford to have a whole department of people working to create newsletters and things. So once we saw the things that Civic Plus could offer us as far as all those types of features, we really felt sure, given also they have a very strong background in serving municipalities all across the country and in New York State. And their references were very stellar, and the price was, we felt, reasonable for what they were offering. So that's all summarized here. And maybe, I don't know if the board has questions or what else I can tell you, but, and there's copies of their RFP, I think, that were either sent around, or I have one. I think I see Robert has one.
Yeah, the RFP was sent around. Their submission, which is 56 pages, I believe, you also received, including a map of all the municipalities that they service throughout the country and Canada. And I can tell you, having been in one of those presentations, just how impressive it is. And I think that our citizens will be really well served by having this website. We'll be able to automate a lot of the functions here in Town Hall, because we recognize that not everybody can come here between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And so we're looking at forms and being able to process them for you with this new website. And again, as Sarah mentioned, information that you're interested in, getting alerts concerning those topics is really sort of key to having public participation. So I'm very excited about this, and I don't know any other questions folks have?
Is this Sarah, is this a generic software that has been designed for this general purpose and is going to be key to us?
Yeah, so this is, It's a proprietary software that has been developed by this specific company. That anybody can be taught to use, and having seen it, and Matt sent a presentation, I did, Robert did. It's very similar to other types that are out there, WordPress, Squarespace, those types of, there's lots out there now
So
that
people who are accustomed.
make it extremely easy for you to update a website without knowing like HTML or other types of, you know, special languages, or, you know, you don't need to do any of that. If you know how to operate a computer, then you can update this type of software. So it's specific to this company, but it's the same software they use for everybody that they have. Does that make sense? Their design will be special to us. So, you know, they'll work with us on what we'd like it to look like and feel like, and we'll probably do some kind of outreach to get pictures and things from around the community, you know, to really make it feel like a local, you know.
Does it have an idiot's code to E-code? I could use that.
You mean to the zoning software?
Yes.
The zoning, yeah, well, we'll have
Gives
that
you
very
like a-
prominently linked, that's for sure.
Mhm.
I did talk to a couple other towns in New York that use E-code, about how they work together, you know, so it'll be very streamlined.
Very good, well, it's all very exciting, I think, and I thank all of you on the communications committee. Sarah, thank you very much for coordinating all that, and I'm very happy to support this resolution. Would you like to read it, Sarah? I believe it's going to be resolution number 66.
66, okay. Resolution number 66, authorizing the town of Red Hook to award a contract for website design and development. Whereas the town of Red Hook has a need for an update to its website to enhance user experience, simplify content management, and provide better information and customer service to its community. And whereas the town of Red Hook has prepared a request for proposal to solicit qualified contractors for this website project. And whereas after review of the responses by the Communications Committee, the purchasing agent has recommended that Civic Plus Incorporated be engaged to complete the website project at a not to exceed amount of $23,996 for the initial year and $4,000 per year annual maintenance for each of the 4 optional renewal years. Now therefore be it resolved by the town board of the town of Red Hook as follows, that the supervisor, Robert McKeon, or in his absence, the deputy supervisor, is hereby authorized and directed to execute an agreement for professional services with Civic Plus Incorporated in substantially the form on file with the purchasing agent, and with such changes as shall not be materially affect the substance thereof, and which shall be consistent with the terms of this resolution. I so move.
And I will second your resolution. Any further discussion?
When will they begin?
That's a good question. So, they can, I haven't found out specifically how quickly they could begin. I've told them that, you know, we're right in the middle of our budget planning process, so as far as money that's available, you know, we're gonna have to look at when we will roll that out. But they can begin as soon as November, or we could put them off a little bit, you know, into the next year. So we'll have to talk about, you know, the timing and how much time the communications committee has to devote to the project, and we need to talk with Dick, because Dick will be heavily involved with helping us move everything over and deciding what to keep and what should be new, and there's a lot of like moving parts to how quickly we could begin it, but there's no specific time.
It will be a transitional period.
Is
Yeah.
it in our budget that
Yeah.
we're talking about Thursday?
Yep. Yep, it's in our budget for 2018, and we have plenty of money in reserves to do it if it turns out to be in 2017. And they also do payment plans, I think.
Yeah,
Our
they have
company,
an
so-
interest-free payment plan
Yeah.
where we could break out that bigger cost, that initial cost over 5 years if we wanted to, or we can just pay it, so we can talk about the pros and cons, but,
Yeah, it's all
Well,
in
if it's an
2018.
interest-free payment plan, it would behoove us to break it over 5.
I mean, maybe, yeah, on the other hand, getting it done, yeah, we can talk about the pros and cons
But
of the
regardless
budget
of
meeting.
that,
But I think, you know, now that we've been through all the details, I think communications committee is eager to just go right ahead and get started, but you know, we're coming up on the holidays not too far from now, so maybe we'll, you know, start the initial planning, but, I mean, this will definitely be mainly a project for next year, at least in my mind.
Okay, very good. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you all, and thank you, Matt, very much. And please convey to the other committee members our thanks for all the work involved with that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Okay, we have Justice Jonah with us this evening. Jonah is here again to talk to us about our favorite topic, which is grants. As you know, we couldn't do all that we do here in the town of Red Hook were it not for folks willing to dedicate some time to writing grants and obtaining those grants to help us keep our taxes down. So Jonah, what would you like to talk to us about this evening?
Well, Mr.
Sir.
Supervisor, members of the board, always a pleasure to be here, especially to talk about the Justice Court Assistance Program grants, which Judge Martin and I have applied for successfully for each of the past 10 years. This year, we're asking for a resolution authorizing us to apply for a grant of up to $30,000 to pay for certain security enhancements here in the courthouse. These would include better locks and entrance control. It would include video surveillance, especially off hours when no one's in the building, an alarm system to protect the building and its contents, and also protective gear for our 2 court officers. In a more prosaic request, we have desk chairs that I think came with the building decades ago, and they need replacement. So we're asking for a grant to replace those 3 desk chairs for the 2 clerks and for Judge Martin from the Courtcraft catalog, which is Corrections Industries, which supplies municipalities with furniture of that nature at a discounted price.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or the members of the public present would have.
So, and just to add to that, the grant is due Thursday, as a matter of fact.
Right, we have to get everything up then by Thursday, but that shouldn't be a problem. I'm gonna come in tomorrow morning and get all the threads together and fax it up there. I will say that we're very proud of the fact that between the village and the town of Red Hook, we've been successful in obtaining almost $80,000 in grants. So we're very proud of that track record, and I think we'll be successful again this year.
Okay. Thank you, Jonah. And we know that the maximum amount, we're waiting on the final tally of the grant application. We
Right.
believe it to be somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000. But the grant maximum is $30,000. Is that right?
So that gives us the flexibility if the final estimate for the video surveillance and alarm system comes higher than we think, we still have the flexibility of saying up to $30,000.
Okay. So that's.
And I want also, may I say, I want to thank our town attorney, Chris Shaw, for her assistance in drafting the resolution.
Very good, thank you. Fellow Rotarians, yes. So let's, shall we, fill in $30,000 in the amount line? This is Town of Red Hook Resolution number 67. Jim, can we borrow your chalks for this one?
Yep.
Okay.
Resolution authorizing the town of Red Hook to pursue a grant application to obtain funding for the town of Red Hook Justice Court. Whereas the town board has determined that the town of Red Hook Justice Court is in need of certain equipment which will ensure that the town of Red Hook provides appropriate mechanisms and ancillary apparatus to the town justices and the court clerks, as well as all personnel and individuals who have business before the town of Red Hook Justice Court. And whereas the town board has been advised by town justices Jeffrey C. Martin and Jonah Treewasser that there might be available certain grant monies from the New York State Justice Court Assistance Grant, which might enable the town to obtain certain revenues to help fund the purchase of certain mechanisms and ancillary apparatus for the town of Red Hook Justice Court. And now therefore be it resolved by the town board of the town of Red Hook, County of Dutchess, State of New York, the town as follows. Number 1, the town board authorizes the Honorable Jeffrey C. Martin and the Honorable Jonah Treewasser, town justices, to make application for the 2017 Justice Court Assistance Grant, requesting funds not to exceed $30,000 to help defray Justice Court costs, including the purchase of certain items necessary for court use. 2, the town board authorizes the Honorable Jeffrey C. Martin and the Honorable Jonah Treebwasser, town justice, take whatever steps which are necessary in order to pursue and hopefully secure any grant monies not to exceed the $30,000 which might be available through the 2017 Justice Court Assistance Grant Program, and any grant monies derived therefrom. I so move.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any further discussion of this?
Hey, you said locks, is that for like electronic locks and things like that on the doors, Sean, or is it
Yes.
just any,
Yes.
something
Uh,
like
Locks
keypad or fob or what
It's a
have you, don't know?
fob system. It's currently in use at Village Hall.
Yeah.
If, for example, we have many committee members who have access to the building, as well they should. Let's say there's a committee chairman who leaves, and, sound security practices are an ex-employee or an ex-committee chair or an ex-committee person should no longer have access to the building after hours. That fob can be turned off until it's returned, by the person involved.
Mhm.
So it gives an enhanced security. And it's not so much for the equipment we have here, which is valuable. Our records are far more valuable. The court records, the clerk's records, zoning records, these are very valuable. So that's why we need this enhanced protection.
No, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I can understand that, it's a different world than it was 20 years ago. and I
Sad to say,
understand
Jim, you're right, absolutely sad to say, but quite true.
it. Yeah.
I think there was a question.
Yeah, is everything hardwired, or could the equipment be used in a different location in the future? For example, since we've been doing a lot of shared municipal stuff, if the town and the village justice court system were to be one in the village hall, could this material be brought to that building?
That's a question, Linda, that I don't have an answer to because I'm one of those people who's lucky to be able to turn on a computer. That's something we'd have to address with Mr. Janelli, who's the one who's going to be installing all this, assuming we get the money for the grant. All right? Unless, Robert, you know. 'Cause you
No,
were-
I would imagine that we would probably want to keep that type of security system here. If we did the other grant that we have for shared court services, if that should materialize someday in the future with one combined location, I would still think that we would want to have camera and fob security for Red Hook Town Hall here. If for some reason court ended up being over in the Village Hall, for example.
The Village Hall already has it.
They already have that system. So I'm not sure that would be necessary to relocate it, but yeah, absolutely. All those systems can be undone and moved to a different location.
Of course, by the time we did it, would be outdated anyway, the way.
Probably so, probably.
And also,
Before you get it, if you.
the practical reality is, and I'm not going to take a position now about whether or not we can have a shared court facility, is that this room here holds more people in Village Hall. So if there was a shared facility, this would be it. I mean, it's just, the Village Hall is not big enough to accommodate both courts. It's not just, they've got 85 seats here, and I think we're rated for 125. Where's our little sign? 150. So it would be here, not there.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jonah.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So we had a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Jonah.
I'll pick that up. Will I be able to get that tomorrow, Claire? The certified
Resolution?
copy? Sure.
Yep.
Great. Good night, all. Thanks.
Good night, Jonah. Thank you very much.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Okay, next on the agenda is item number 3. As we spoke last time about the possibility of calling a public hearing on the solar zoning for an upcoming meeting. The attorneys had to do some tweaking, and that tweaking has been done. You have a lot of documents in front of you, not the least of which, if we'd like to move forward tonight and start getting the input of the public, the planning board, both locally and Dutchess County, and others, we would want to call a public hearing. And first, we would then need to establish lead agency for this initiative. And we had a resolution establishing lead agency.
The first page of this, I think, in your packet that you have here, is your
There it is.
You know, I don't think we should move forward with this until we have a discussion as a board. Moving forward with any action before we discuss it. Several people on the board here don't know anything about it. Plus, it's been changed since I last saw this law. So I'd be very reluctant to move forward with it at all at this point.
Okay. I think we did have a discussion about it at a previous meeting, but if you would like more time, Harry, certainly we could.
I've looked at this and spent a few hours actually reading it. I have a number of issues with it that are not particularly new to the discussions we've had in the past. And the more I look at it, what I would suggest would, as an action at this point in time, that in lieu of moving forward with this law, that we put in place a moratorium on ground-mounted solar altogether until we have this law passed, because I'm concerned as we all are that people are moving forward with solar. We have no regulations now, but if we had a moratorium on ground-mounted solar, we could that would stop any solar being installed until we actually have the guidelines and the zoning, and people who are putting roof-mounted on it would have no impact on it. So that's my proposal at the moment.
Okay, well, I know that this draft law has been worked on for many, many months. In fact, I believe it's well over a year now. And I realize that you're not a proponent of ground-mounted solar, and I respect that, Harry, but I do feel like we need to move forward and get the input from the public, from our planning boards. And there's a lot of work has gone into this to try and address any potential negative impacts, and I think it's a real opportunity now for us to solicit from the public how they feel about solar, and in particular this draft, which has had I don't know how many iterations over the last year and a half. It is you know, substantively unchanged from drafts you've had in the past, minor tweaks, and certainly, you know, more changes can occur once we receive public input. In fact, I hope that we would entertain some of those proposed changes.
The entire board hasn't had the chance to look at it before we begin to move forward with it, and I think that's important that we have a public discussion of this before that moves forward. And as I said before, I'm concerned about this is continuing to happen in the town while we're discussing it, and it could be it is not a good state of affairs. And I read it today, and it says that there will be 3 strategies, but then as I read it, there are actually 4. So, which I don't quite understand. And I think it's something that should be the entire board should fully understand before we move forward.
Well, I think the board has had, you know, drafts of this for quite some time. It's only had minor tweaking since the last versions of it. I'd like to, there's nothing that would prevent us from, you know, moving in that direction. I don't support a moratorium, Harry, on it, but there's nothing that would prevent us, after we hear from the public on this topic, from doing that.
I think
Yeah.
one of the things just 2 things, I guess. One is, I think the fact that it has changed, even if it's small, it is a little bit of a complicated law because there are lots of different types of solar arrays and lots of different guidelines for the different types of parcels and zoning, what's the word, not areas, zoning districts. So it's complicated enough, although it's not like the most complicated type of zoning amendment, you know, but it's complicated enough that I think it makes me certainly a little bit nervous about going ahead and moving right to a public hearing without really understanding like, okay, what is this, if this is really like not a final, but you know, it's our best work up to date. You know, just, I feel a little bit nervous that I may not quite understand what all the different drafts have been, although I hear what you're saying, that it hasn't changed too much in substance from the last time we looked at it. I guess, I think that when we had it that time, the first time it was introduced officially, Dennis, you were here, right? And gave us a short PowerPoint, is that right? Yeah. But it was a pretty, like, bird's eye view presentation. It didn't really get into all the different impacts on the different districts. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, is there room for, like, before we move to public hearing, I mean, I would be okay with setting a public hearing if it's like out far enough, but I would almost rather see us look at like a workshop, like our next one, and have somebody like Ted Fink or Michelle, somebody who's worked on this, come and just present to the board, here's what we have, here are the impacts on the different districts, and invite like the CAC, like really do a, you know, be very clear, not just the day before when the agenda is set, but like really invite the main stakeholders, the Ag and Open Space Committee, like any committees who would really have thoughtful input to put into this, to be here in the same room and really talk about it. And so it wouldn't exactly be a public hearing, but it would give us just maybe one more meeting to really get some feedback before we move to the public hearing. I know that, you know, the public hearing isn't ever the end all, because if we hear some feedback, we can always change it, but I'd still rather see us have that opportunity with more stakeholders in the room. Because I just haven't, I feel like I know I've heard a little bit from the CAC on email, but I don't know if they sent formal comments. I don't think they did. Have they sent formal comments?
Well, let me just
Yeah.
address your
Sure.
things, because you wanted to have an input and you wanted to have a presentation. I know Dennis did a presentation just, I believe, 2 meetings ago, if I have that right,
Yeah, I think so. It says that.
on the main points of the solar proposal. At that time, you went over all the committees that had been sent the draft for their comments and the one response that we received.
Right.
So I understand, I welcome when everybody comes to the meetings to participate, but I feel like we can't wait until they physically show up if they prefer to review it and make their comments electronically.
Sure.
But if you feel that it's important to wait another meeting before considering calling a public hearing, you know, I guess we could do that, but we do need to keep moving forward if we're going to have our municipal solar project that, you know, as you heard the presentation, we expect to be able to save our taxpayers north of $1.5 million once we do that. So we'd want to have some zoning on the books before that happens, and that is moving along with timeframes. So we'll need to have that in place.
I mean, my feeling is that we're close on this. The last time I read it, it seemed very comprehensive. The CAC actually was concerned that it was too restrictive.
Yes.
Which isn't usually what you hear from
Yes.
them. And
Yes.
so, for an environmental type law. So that's my only concern, is I don't recall that they sent those comments in formally. And I'm concerned that there may be other committees or people who maybe read it, maybe didn't read the most final draft. And to have us all in a room together to hear more of a formal presentation. It could be Dennis, it doesn't have to be Ted, but somebody who could really go through, not exactly line by line, but, you know, give us even a little more detail than we got last time, and just help us really consider how it will impact. For example, maybe a little bit more detail on where would big solar farm type installations be allowed, you know, under this law. You know, things like that I think are things that people really do start to get concerned about, you know. I don't think I feel like we're close enough that something like a moratorium isn't really, I personally don't think necessarily, because I think we could pass something, you know, soon. I'm just worried that we haven't really had that discussion publicly yet about what's really in it, but that's just my feeling.
And you don't think we could mix in that sort of workshop environment that you thought with getting public input? Because I mean, that's part of the process, is to make sure that we invite the public in, especially.
Well, could it be
You know,
some
in
kind of
time.
workshop where people can comment, but it's not a public hearing, or, I mean, we could do it at a public hearing, I just feel like a public hearing feels like, I just think the amount of times that we actually change something after a public hearing, it's really not
We have,
very
I think you need full agreement of all of the board before you have any public hearings, and the board should be working on this as a group to get this complete. And I'm concerned that it would take quite some time. And if it does, we may see things happen that we don't like. So we've already seen things happen that I don't like. That it's in that context I would think a moratorium would stop things from being put in the ground, and until we have it spelled out in all its gory detail. And I did read it, and I have quite a few questions on it, different things than I remember us discussing, in which I've been present in pretty much all the discussions, and I didn't have a sense that it was ready to move to a vote. So I would be very much against moving forward at this time.
okay, I will point out that I asked for comments in the last, I think, 3 meetings on the draft. If anybody had some comments on the draft that was in front of them, I received no comments about the drafts. I mentioned that, we would take up the topic of calling a public hearing so we can solicit some input from our planning board, county planning board, and the public. And, the draft has not changed in any substantive form. It's just tweaking. Again, I look forward to hearing from the public, so I would be willing to call a public hearing at this point, because I remain flexible on, making any changes. And I have also heard that it's too restrictive, and I know that, Harry would like to see no ground-mounted system. So I recognize that we've got very differing opinions on this topic, but we do need to move forward, have something in place that is a good compromise that works for the people of Red Hook.
I wouldn't say that I don't want any ground-mounted systems, but I think it has to be strictly controlled, though. And I'm just in reading through this today, I saw some what I thought to be not squirrely issues, put it that way, with ground-mounted.
Bill, I know you've been involved in the ITF meetings, reviewing drafts and stuff, and I don't know if you were ready to hear from the public or not, but I wonder
Well,
your
I'm always
opinion.
ready to hear from the public, but there seems to be some sense that the draft before us is just dated yesterday. So that does show a bit of a more recent finalization of what's going to be presented to the public. We take your word for it that it was just tweaked, and I'm sure, but we should have maybe something in writing from the people who tweaked it, the planners or the lawyers, who gives the sense that it hasn't changed since, for example, Dennis made his presentation.
Yeah.
So I mean, there should be a final product that the board has really had a chance to absorb and to accept or reject. Harry has points he wants to make and should be able to make those.
Yep.
But once we have the draft that everybody agrees this is what we want to take to the public, then we go to the public. A little concerned that, like the committees that have been solicited, what draft did they get? Did they get one from like a month ago? Is it the same one as dated 10/9? So I mean, there's a little bit of a,
It is.
I don't want people to say, well, what you're presenting to the public is not what you gave us. I mean, we've got to be very careful not to have that happen.
We can recirculate this draft to this committee.
And as far as the presentation goes, even though it takes a little bit more doing, but I mean, I think, isn't the, well, first of all, about the moratorium, I mean, I think we already have a moratorium in effect, and, that's enough for now. I don't think we should be having a couple of moratoriums, right away. Jim doesn't want any,
Except
but I mean,
the moratorium on this would probably be a much better idea than the one that we did.
well, all right, well, I mean, I'll wait for you to say what you say, but anyway, I mean, I think we've already taken some action with a moratorium. I don't think we need to do that because the legislation is here, it's in writing, it has been discussed, it has been researched. So it's not like the usual moratorium where there's no laws and somebody's got to create some laws to apply if they want them to. This clearly is a proposed legislation, and for many people, it's very appropriate. But we do have to present it to the public so we get the input and the dialogue. So I think we should do it sooner. It says here anything after December 1 would be regulated by the zoning, and that seems to be a smart thing. Whether we would have to move that back a little bit, but I think we should proceed as soon as possible to set the public hearing once everybody has a sense of what the legislation is.
Okay, well, we have 15 days until our next, that's another half month until our next meeting. And we can, if you would just send along some recommendations, what you'd like answered, what type of workshop format, who you would like there to answer your questions. We can dedicate some time to that at the next meeting. Would that be good?
Okay, if, for example, we set a public hearing, and if there's a public hearing down the road on a certain date, who is it that's going to present this new legislation to the public? Who's going to be presenting
Well,
it?
who's going to present it to us?
No,
Well, Harry, the main points were already presented to you.
Okay, but
I mean, we
in
can
the,
help.
this is, in the event,
Mhm,
we have a public hearing,
mhm.
who's going to present it to the public?
I think we could ask Dennis to present it to us. He's quite familiar with every aspect of the law.
So Dennis
if he'd
represents
be
the
willing to.
Energy Committee,
Yeah, and
which has been
Dennis is-
instrumental in creating the legislation.
That's right.
Right.
I
So
think
we
it
should
be a
hear,
Planner. Who wrote this? I don't know who wrote this.
This was a combination of Energy Committee members, ITF Committee members, planners, attorneys.
What planner?
Ted Fink was involved in the writing of it, yes.
so Ted probably should be present if he's available.
I would want
With
to
a
ask, I
representative
would
from
want
the
to ask
Energy
Ted
Committee
questions.
and organize the presentation, right?
We can have a second presentation if you'd like. I thought we hit the main points of it in the
Okay,
first
but-
one, but
What I'm saying is, whoever's going to present this proposed legislation to the public, if they could present it quick to the board at some point before that public hearing, that would seem to satisfy some of the people on this board.
I thought I thought you just did that. If, didn't you just do that at a previous meeting, 2 meetings ago?
You know, if there's not a dialogue where you're asking questions
Yeah.
as we're going through it, you know, I guess you know,
We did do
maybe
that.
that's the structure of the meeting that we need to have in order to be able to go top to bottom, and we, you know,
for
rather
example,
than
Dennis,
prolong it.
I've looked through this, ABD is not even mentioned in this new draft. And there has been discussion about applying solar energy to the agricultural business district. There's in here a limit on 10 acres per parcel, you know, for solar. But if you have adjoining parcels and you combine 2 or 3 parcels, does that give you 30 acres? So I'm not sure that I've been present in that discussion.
And sorry, just to interrupt for a second, number one, Dennis's presentation was given to us the day we got the draft, so it really wasn't a time that we could ask questions, and number two, we really never got into anywhere near that level of detail with his presentation. But those are the kinds of questions that people here in Red Hook want to have on their minds when they look at a piece of legislation like this, and it's totally fair and reasonable because we've done so much work on our farming, zoning, and, you know, just all, you know, all the residential, everything, so it's, I think it's very
So why don't we
appropriate to have
set-
some kind of more detailed presentation that isn't necessarily a
Okay.
public hearing. That's
Okay,
just
so
like-
shall we set that up for the 25th then? We'll dedicate half hour, 45 minutes, question and answers. I'll circulate or ask Jackie to circulate to those same committees for their input on this draft.
You gotta freeze,
And then we'll-
you gotta freeze this, you know, this copy, if we're finished with, you know, any edits on it, then that's what we have to do.
You're not even
Because-
sure it's finished yet, so how can we be sure?
No,
Okay.
you know,
Well,
I mean, without going into detail, I mean, you know, some of it was grammar, you know, these were not, you know, Robert mentioned
They
a
were
couple of times,
capitals.
there were nothing substantive that was changed from the time that I gave the presentation.
Okay, well, that's
So,
at least if
But I think, to be fair, you know, if there's an interpretation of he or they or them, and it can somehow lead to some concern about the language and the intent behind the language, then yes, we should freeze it, pass it out to the board members, have a separate meeting to just go through any kinds of questions, top to bottom, and then put it out to the public. I mean, if you feel that, it's ready to be reviewed by the public, then that's the way we should do this.
Okay.
Somewhere in the preliminary statements in here, as I noticed earlier today, it says there would be three alternate kind of approaches or systems, and then as you get into the gory details, it has 4 systems, 4 different approaches, which
You're talking about the one that would apply in a farmstead?
And the one that's under 3, I don't quite understand what the logic of that is, and
Okay, so let's take up
Should
these
answer that,
specific
Mary.
questions we'll dedicate 30 to 45 minutes at the next meeting, circulate this draft around, 15 more days, take a look at it, see if you feel more comfortable with it at the next meeting. How does that sound?
I wouldn't want
And
to.
invite
Yeah,
I think we should have a meeting dedicated to this, a public meeting of the board dedicated to this with Ted Fink or Michelle, either one of them here.
We'll
That's what a
invite
public
them.
hearing is though, Harry.
Yeah,
Huh?
That's what a public hearing is.
Well, we didn't pass the public hearing yet.
okay. So
I wouldn't do it.
let's see if Ted is available to join us. Dennis will be available to join us. Anybody else you would like to be here as part of that process? We'll take it up again. We'll see if we can do the Q&A to your satisfaction, collective satisfaction at the next meeting, and see if we want to take any action at that point.
Well, Harry's right, Robert, in the fact that you say that it mainly hasn't changed, but the devil is in the details, at least the last 30 years that I know of, our major concern has been the historic value and historic things in Red Hook, primarily view shed. Anything that's built or anything like that, we're always concerned about the view shed. And I'm with Harry, I have solar panels on my roof. And it's at an angle you don't see them, but I'm sorry, the ground mounted ones, we have to be very cautious where they're gonna be allowed, because they are butt ugly, let's be honest.
Well, not
There's-
everybody
there's
shares
nothing-
that opinion. There are a
There's
lot of people.
nothing attractive about them, so that's why the devil is in the details, exactly where they can be
Okay,
placed.
well, again, there's varying opinions. Some people show off their panels, they love them. It's not for any of us to comment whether they're beautiful or not, I think. I mean, we're all
We
entitled
comment
to our
whether we
opinion.
like it or not,
Right.
everything,
Yeah, I
historic
mean, we're
structures and
entitled
everything
to.
else, and view shed.
Again,
And let's face it, they don't create a view shed, that's for sure.
Again, that's why if we look at the law, for every iteration of this law, it has not been allowed in the historic landmark overlay district. It's not allowed ground mounted. It's not allowed in many of our historic districts, the hamlets, whatever, period, not allowed, small, medium, large, okay? So we need to hear from our public. This seems like a good route to go to see if we can get at least consensus. I don't think we're gonna get unanimous on this topic.
But then, look, for instance, we might not be in a historic district, but as you drive into Red Hook, from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, there's nothing that would be more unattractive than to see one of our beautiful fields filled with solar panels, let's be honest.
Absolutely. And I think, those are the questions that I think, we've tried to address, but I think you'll see that these solar farms are implausible or not allowed in almost all of our township. There are very few locations that will fit the strict requirements of this current draft. So-
Then we will, all of us make ourselves very familiar with the latest draft we have, which is the draft, and then, as you said, have the
Okay.
workshop session.
Okay, so let's see how we do at our next town board meeting, and if we need more on this topic, we'll take more time.
Well, I think we should know the nature of the meeting. And I think we should have the planner here.
Yes, I already said that. I will ask for him to be
And we
here.
may have to have an entire meeting on this.
Okay, if it lasts a long time, then it'll last a long time. If we need a second meeting, we'll take a second meeting on it, Harry. Okay?
Okay.
Very good. Item number 4, we're ready to move on. Item number 4 is Community Development Block Grant Application. We had a public hearing for that. We discussed the possibilities. We're having a meeting tomorrow, the Rec Commission, Rec Director Doug Strawinsky, Harry Colgan, myself, to discuss additional funding for the Rec Park West, ADA options, pathways, pavilion, restroom. The idea would be to come up with a project that would meet approximately $150,000 worth of funding. The Village of Red Hook, the mayor I spoke with today, they are interested in potentially partnering with us as they did last year on this Rec Park West CDBG grant application. And so we hope to have something for your consideration before the application deadline, which is October 20th. So we have 2 ways that we can proceed, which is we can pass a resolution tonight if you wish to avoid an additional meeting. We do have budget meetings coming up in between our next town board meeting. And then we can look at the particular application afterwards, or we can wait to pass a resolution after you've seen the scope of work, which involves either the restrooms, the pavilion, or the parking, or the pathways. Those are the 4 things that would qualify as part of the project.
Well, based upon the public hearing tonight, I would move the resolution as it's drafted.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill, myself.
Okay.
Sarah?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I'll read it.
That's resolution number 68.
Whereas the town of Red Hook is participating in the Dutchess County Community Development Consortium for fiscal year 2018, and whereas input from citizens and groups has been received and considered, and whereas an application has been prepared for Recreational Park West in the amount of $150,000, which addresses our community concerns. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dutchess County Community Development Consortium fiscal year 2018 application for the town of Red Hook for Recreational Park West in the amount of $150,000, together with a certification included therein, is hereby approved. And be it further resolved that the officers of the town are hereby authorized and directed to submit said application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, and to do all things necessary or convenient in connection therewith. And I so move.
Thank you very much, Bill. I'll second your resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jim?
So that's to be done by the 20th.
Is that an aye, Jim? We've lost Jim.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he did, I heard him.
Very good. The next and last item on the agenda is correspondence. We received a couple of letters, one from the Economic Development Committee talking about streamlining the process for development in town. We also received a letter of interest from Stephen Appenzeller, who would like to join the CAC.
Could we find out what the economic development means by an ombudsman? I mean, what their process is? I don't know that anybody's ever heard of that, right?
Yeah, I
You
think
have?
basically an ombudsman is somebody who interfaces between the public and the institution when the institution is so opaque that the public is having difficulty understanding all the rules and regulations. So what they're saying is, people routinely come to the planning board or the zoning board of appeals and are told, well, you didn't come with the right paperwork, or you didn't fill out the thing correctly, and so you have to come back in 2 weeks, and then, right, and then like, oh, well, they can't make it in 2 weeks, or their attorney, blah, 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 whatever.
And then they
It stresses
change,
out the
then
whole
they
process.
change their plan.
So
So
what
it's
they're
not all
saying is if there was
one-sided.
an ombudsperson, then they would be able to answer questions in a more informal way, say, than the zoning officer. I mean, I'm not advocating for this, I'm just saying, I think that's what they're trying to say, is that maybe there's another role that's needed to try to interface. It's something that we should talk about, for sure.
Okay, and as far as Stephen's letter of interest, I think he was interested in the first of the year joining the CAC, and we haven't heard back from Laura Eusted on whether or not.
Is there an opening?
Yes, there is. There was a resignation several months ago. So maybe we can add that to our agenda for the next meeting or thereafter. Let's see. He's gonna start attending those meetings one way or the other, he indicated.
We didn't have his biography in our packet. Did you ask,
It's right on the back of his letter.
It's right there.
it's on the back of the letter?
Yeah.
Yes,
It's very
we double
extensive.
signed here.
There you go.
Okay, that's all we have for this evening. Thank you all very much for joining us. There's one last public comment period. Would anybody like to make some more public comment?
Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
hearing none.
doesn't have a strong agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that we close
Second.
this evening's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much for joining us. We're gonna have to separate you two.